So tell me your name.
Coco First.
Coco First. So if I was to ask Coco First, who is Coco First? Who is Coco First?
Well, that's interesting to ask who is Coco First because I wear many hats. So, with that being said, I'm a business. I'm a business of, I'm a mother, I'm a friend, I'm a motivational speaker. I also am very involved in what I feel is very important as far as a movement in our community. So I write. I'm on Facebook. I have a interactive book that I'm writing called Coco's Diary. So check that out. And you can also follow me on Facebook. I'm always saying or doing something inspiring, silly, funny, but just I'm a person. I'm a real life person who feels like in my lifetime, I personally don't feel like there was enough elders or people to really pave the way close enough, stay with the process on what character building is about. And I feel like that's my purpose. Having 7 children and looking at this world not really confident in their role models. My job as a mom and as a person is to make sure that they at least have some sort of template of what a real human should be. And of course, I want them to be everything that they are inspired to be, but I also want them to have ethics in their lives and morals, which our society is deeply lacking right now. So just a little bit of who I am.
Okay, that's more than a little bit. So tell me more about when you talk about pave the way, like they didn't pave the way. Tell me more about that.
I'll say this. I remember growing up, and I remember a statement that I'm sure you can remember, and every person kind of in our generation can remember. Our parents and elders saying, "Do as I say and not as I do." And as a child, when you're told to do as you say and not as you do, you know it's wrong then. But as you grow older, life begins to teach you why it's wrong. You can't do something and then teach your children differently because you end up following the same patterns that was laid out for you. And it damaged me in a lot of ways. It damaged my ability to have a balance of, certainty about life in a lot of ways. Because, oh, don't worry about this, let me worry about it. Well, your children worry when you worry. When you're unstable, your children see those things. And as a child, I cared about my mom, my dad, and adults around me. I just seen that there was always a lot of unhappiness. And of course, we went to church and we praised the Lord and we prayed and we come together and sell barbecue and things like that. But it didn't last. It wasn't a sense of this is something that can contain me until the next time. I remember as a child thinking, I wish I didn't have to leave church because that was the place where people seemed or appeared to express themselves in more love and togetherness, or the right things were at least being said. Not necessarily done, but said. But when you leave the church, you go home and you go to your 4 corners of the world, there's no one who's willing to be transparent in their lives to give other children or people pattern after them. What does this look like if you go through? What does it look like if you are in a domestic violence situation? What does it look like if your parents are depressed and they're not really able or capable of taking care of you? What does it look like if you're a child who's struggling with his identity because there is no men around and the only men that you have is TV dads? And I personally am a person, I don't just, when I speak to people, I hear the human in them. I hear from the level of their challenges. And when I feel like, no one paved the way, it was always a cover-up. let's cover up everything. We don't want you to really see. We just want to glamorize life. We only want you to pay attention to this. But clearly, life isn't glamorized when you're looking around and everyone's suffering. There's no glamour to that. And the people who suffer the most happen to look like me. So I felt, and coming in church and in school, I will always get, oh, you're an outspoken person, or you're a little minister, or you're this, and always was kind of chosen to be the spokesperson. Then I didn't know. I'm just being the person that I was. But now I understand. I've always had a great love for human development, and I feel like that's my purpose on this planet, is to somehow at least begin to turn this emotional wreck of a human, and this goes beyond culture. This goes beyond our ego of a male and female, or a race, or all of these things that we tend to idolize. This is about a human, and why we don't want our children to grow up and have to go to the army to die for a world of people who doesn't make wise choices. They don't make wise choices. We know they don't make wise choices, yet we turn our children over to these people who don't make wise choices. And then we teach them, after we talked about them not making wise choices, we teach them, at least you'll have some sort of security. At least you'll have something to back you up if they come home. So there's a lot of things that our children can change by at least having a balanced understanding of the world, the law, and what they can do to help. If they feel more, I can do this, and not only can I do this, but yeah, I see Coco, she's nice, she's friendly, yeah, she look fly sometimes, she do spoken word, she's saying nice things, but when you see me in my personal life, what does my personal life look like? Am I saying something different than what I'm doing? Yeah, I may say, yeah, take care of your children, be a perfect mom, and some days I'm tired. But I'm dedicated to the process that says that when you are tired, be tired. But you're dedicated to what these children need to see in you, and that is, how do I overcome my challenges? Give me something to hold on to. What do I thrive for? And how can you help me to, separate what you want and what I want? And that's been the culture difference, not culture, but generational gap between our parents and their parents, and generations. We need our youth like they need us. Our youth is the new generation of technology. They came that way. They can look at things, they can solve problems, their minds are quicker, process to them is shorter because that's the age in which they come in. But they need us, because without process, then they'll shipwreck, because everything has to have a process. Everything, you don't just meet John Doe today and tomorrow you're married to that person. Usually that process is not very successful. I'm not saying that, it can't happen for people, but we don't want to teach our children that, sell yourself short, jump into things, and it'll be okay. We need them to understand that in process, especially relationships, there's a courting process. There's a getting to know you process. You need to know that person in season and out of season. Those things are being eliminated. And that's why our children need us. And that's why we need them, because we need the sharpness. We need the ability to also upgrade our mental technology,
Mm-hmm.
So.
And you talked about a little bit about the damage and the dysfunction. When was your awakening moment?
If you're a child, it doesn't matter whether you were born in poverty or born in sickness, but if you came into this life, it really is a weird way that this works. If you experienced a lot of suffering or lack, or perhaps you were sick and you always had to be under doctor's care, usually those children awaken sooner than other people. Their level of understanding and their level of empathy is already activated at a younger age. And I never could understand poverty. I never could understand why when I was bused out to the white schools, what made them privileged? What made, why did God like them more? And then when I go home, in my neighborhoods, it was just so much sadness, violence, negative talk, and that sort of thing. So I had a chance to spend half of my days in one place and then half in another place, which even though I lived in the hood, my mother kept me sheltered from the hood. So I went to school, came home, and went to church. Yet I lived in a vicinity where there was so much poverty. So when I look at people, I never looked at them like, oh, you just a drunk. I always was like, what happened? What happened to your joy? Like, do you know you can be anything you want to be? I want them to, to thrive. It was a feeling of wanting people to feel life and wanting, make a difference in your own life. Like, do some jumping jacks, do a flip. It's just life. And if you don't project it in any sort of way of good, then what I would see on people, well, a lot of times will be that they were going down the wrong path emotionally. So I don't know if I can say a certain particular date or kind of time frame. I just kind of was always in tune with how people function. And then, of course, I got a little older. That was kind of looked at as, oh, you're weird, you stare too much, or, certain things. So then the church, being in church helped me to kind of be preserved and, and that sort of thing, and be watchful. So I had an imbalance because at school I was popular and I was, I had friends growing up in a certain place, but then I was the church girl, or at church I was the little minister, and I was always trying to tie in my worlds. I didn't understand why I couldn't hang with unsaved kids. They were my friends. And being bused out to a school outside of your environment, we needed each other. It was all we had to survive, So we learned to be friends, but I didn't understand when things would be said about not being those people friends who didn't believe a certain way. So I always had a conflict in that. I always had a conflict in, injustice, people saying things and doing differently. And I'm very firm on, being who I say I am. So maybe that sometimes get me in trouble because you have to have grace with people. You don't know where they are. You don't know what path that they've had to come. So I just want to understand more. I don't have to be right. I don't need to be right. I just want to understand.